We woke up in the middle of the night. She was gray and limp. Kim here, homeschooling mom 2-4 and chaos coordinator since 2009. This video is about my kids' dietary restrictions over the years. I have 2 other videos I've talked about my husband's. He does not have a large intestine. My food journey and what I'm able to eat. Now my 4 kids each had a different journey as they've gone along. So our oldest was a very colicky child. Sorry, I'm learning to look at the camera. We never were quite able to figure out what was wrong. Looking back, I know what was going on, I'm pretty sure. And I wish with all my heart that I could go back and redo my first year with her with the knowledge I know now. All that to be said, I have to constantly remind myself that we do what we do with the knowledge that we have at the time. And I didn't know then what I know now. So my oldest's food problems, I did not fully figure out or understand until I had my 3rd child. What I do know, looking back, is that I remember very distinctly that she reacted when I ate corn-fed beef. When she turned 6 months old, she would go into what we just called them episodes. We didn't know what they were. We always knew one was coming because she would cock her head and just start vomiting for hours and hours and hours, and then suddenly she'd be done. She'd be all better. And when she was in those those vomiting states, she would just kind of zone out, and it was scary. And at first, we thought she was sick, and then she was born post-term and was still 5 pounds 12 ounces. So she's always been really tiny. So that didn't help that she was vomiting so profusely, and it turned into about every week she would go through one of these episodes of just vomiting and vomiting and vomiting. The only thing we knew was that we had that little head tilt that would give us, a heads up that it was going to happen, but also that as time went on, the episodes got longer. And I think her longest episode was 12 hours. And we didn't know what triggered them. I will get to what happened to her once I get to my 3rd child, looking back on what actually happened. When she was 3 years old, we were in the grocery store one day, and she was very verbal, and her head cocked, and she said, "Mommy, everything's green," and she kept shutting her eyes. And that was one thing. When she got old enough, she would just shut her eyes and hold her hand over her eyes. But this time she was able to talk to me, and she said, "Mommy, everything's green, everything's green." And then in the car she started vomiting. And anytime, we knew it was coming, we would race home, shut off all the lights, and I would have to hold her while she vomited for hours and hours on end. During one of her episodes, we were able to get her on fluids because it had gotten so bad. She was just dry heaving, and it had been over 12 hours since she'd eaten. And they were able to do an MRI. We thought maybe a tumor or something. We thought maybe there were stomach migraines. But when she said everything's green, we realized, oh, she's getting migraines. Because that's like the aura you get if anybody's experienced migraines before. So we thought they were just migraines. That's what we called them. My 2nd child came along, and I don't remember how old she was. She was maybe 2 months maybe. There was a rash on her body, and it just kept spreading and spreading and spreading. And she was a pretty chill baby, but it was a little fussy, just like any other baby. And it just, it kept spreading. And when it finally got down south, I was like, okay, I don't know what's causing this. And I went on the TED diet, which is a total elimination diet. You're basically down to turkey, pears, and rice. And then you slowly add in foods to see what was causing it. Because I was taking out the big ones, the top 10. I'll list the top 8 here. These are the top 8. I tried to eliminate the top 8, and it was still spreading. And then we were able to narrow it down very quickly.
Editor Kim here. This was all, of course, because I was nursing. One of the things that can come to mind and play games with a new mom's mind especially is, well, just do formula. The problem is the formula that would also work for such allergens is insanely expensive. I just did a quick Google search now, and it's about $2 an ounce. So for a 5-ounce bottle, $10 every time the child eats. That's a $10 meal, and babies eat every 2 to 4 hours. So it's really expensive, even more expensive than the foods I was trying. And I know fed is best, but we also just simply couldn't afford the formula that would be required. And then there's also no guarantee that we would be able to find a formula that would help solve the issues at hand.
We ended up narrowing it down, and she was allergic, meaning would break out in a body rash, to corn and eggs. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but corn's in everything. I'm talking I went back to, I couldn't have corn-fed beef. If I had corn-fed beef, she would break out. So that's how sensitive she was, and this is because I was breastfeeding. So I had to eliminate all corn. If you think about all the things that corn is in, that in itself really improved our diet. Now, the eggs were sad. I really did miss eggs. I like eggs. She eventually outgrew the egg allergy. Corn allergy got less and less over the years. If she accidentally had popcorn at school, she would have itchies. She called them her itchies, but she wouldn't go into like anaphylactic shock or anything like that. She still gets like rosy cheeks and things like that, and I'm assuming it's just her tolerance level has built over the years. Then finally, our third child came along, Genevieve. So I always started kids on solids. I started them on baby oatmeal and baby rice, and I would always just mix it with my breast milk, and then I would always do it right before bed because they would sleep better at night because they had a fuller, thicker, fuller tummy. But anytime I did that, we would wake up and she would just have vomit all over her. One time, we woke up in the middle of the night. She was gray and limp. I couldn't wake her up, and she wasn't responding, so I took her to the ER. She just kept vomiting and vomiting. It was very scary. By the time we checked in and the doctor saw us, she kind of snapped out of it and was fine. And they just said, well, it looks like she just had a bug or something. We don't know. It was a fluke. So they sent us home. Figured out it was every time she had oats that she would throw up. But I thought it was the oddest thing that she was throwing up oats. I was just at my wit's end trying to figure out what it was that was going on. How is it possible that my child was allergic to oats and rice? And it was 2 hours after she ate, 2 hours later, she would start vomiting. I'd like you to think about this. Think of baby foods. If you go down the baby food aisle, everything has oats in it or rice. Everything. We couldn't even have Cheerios because if you've ever had a kid, you know that Cheerios don't stay on the table. Cheerios fall everywhere. You find them under your cushions, you find them in the car, and the last thing we wanted was the baby getting a hold of one and putting it in her mouth, and then 2 hours later just be vomiting everywhere. So I was sitting with her on my chest, and I just started searching on my phone. For those of you that know me from my previous channel, I'm really good at finding things on the internet. It's just kind of a special power I have. And I ended up finding, everybody slams that door, a random forum that had a question, and somebody in the answers linked to a website that described something called FPIES. To this day, I still don't know how to pronounce it. I'll put that here. And I read through the symptoms, and it was exactly what we were going through. The child eats the food and doesn't have a reaction until 2 hours later, and vomits for hours on end, and sometimes goes into shock. I texted it to my pediatrician, and her response was, I will look into this. And what do you know, that weekend, she went to a conference, and they were talking about FPIES. She couldn't believe it. So she was able to do some research, and there's no skin test for it. There's no blood test for it. There is no cure for it. The only upside to FPIES is that they eventually do outgrow it, usually by the age of 5. FPIES is an immature large intestine, is allergic to random foods. So you cannot test it by typical medical means. Eventually the large intestine will mature enough and the child can eat those foods and have absolutely no problems. The only long-term side effects are that the relationship the child has with food is very stressful. So Genevieve, if you've watched any of our food videos, you'll hear me make comments. She has a lot of anxiety around food. And I was very grateful that it was only 4 foods I had to avoid, rather than only having 4 safe foods. There's a lot of kids with FPIES, and it takes a lot of time and work and effort to just find 4 safe foods. There was one time I remember digging through our dumpster trash, looking for the ingredients on a cookie I had given the kids, and sure enough, the very last ingredient on it was oat flour, and that's why she was vomiting. Anything it was labeled organic, I would not buy, because if it was a pre-made organic food, because almost always they added oat or oat flour in it. That's like a standard thing in organics, is let's add oats to it, which is totally fine. I love oatmeal. It's just they put it in everything. The way you try it, because at no point do you ever want to give your child something that they'll throw up. It always happens by accident.
I forgot to mention, Genevieve did eventually outgrow her FPIES by the age of 3, I believe, and it was discovered by accident. She was given a cookie somewhere, and we said, well, we'll see what happens. And she didn't throw up, so we knew she had outgrown it.
When we had our fourth child, I realized early on when I was nursing him that whenever I ate oats, he got really fussy. John did not have any rice or oats for the first year of his life. And I think we accidentally trialed it when he was 18 months, and he was fine. Does that mean he had FPIES? We don't know, since he never had access to it either in my milk or in regular food. His stomach could have healed from it. All that to be said, looking back on my oldest daughter's situation, she had FPIES. I don't know what the trigger food was. It happened at 6 months, which is when she started solids. She would vomit for hours and hours and hours nonstop, and she would go limp and not respond. And it stopped all of a sudden when she was 5. So those are our food restrictions that we used to have and that have molded and shaped our diet over the years. And I will say that we eat much healthier now. Every step has been in a direction of healthier eating and less convenience foods, which is very interesting to think about the kind of food that we eat, that it takes food allergies to change my diet habits to be healthy. Makes me wonder if we were healthy to begin with and had better eating habits, would that mitigate the allergies that we have? I don't know. There's a lot of questions, but right now all I can speak to is our experience. So if anybody out there is struggling or experiencing FPIES, I am an open book when it comes to that topic. Looking back at my first daughter and what she went through, I have to keep reminding myself it's okay to make mistakes. The important part is to learn from them. God bless.